Yo. So my friend was asking how I made the sound or like what I did to it, and I thought it'd be kind of a cool way to just show off a little bit of my process and sort of how I turned a sample, which is definitely not legal, into something that probably won't get noticed. Um, it's this orchestral sample. Let me see if I can pull up the thing. It is inspiration. I should have been prepared when I turned the camera on. I don't know how to say it, but Nox Arumik by Eric Whitaker. So I sampled that, which is here. Should I turn it? No, it's already pitch. So this is the original sample. I think I took from this area. Yeah, it's around here, I think. It's going to sound a little different because I put it in a sampler. So the first step really was just dropping it into this sampler and picking the area I want. So if I want it at the normal pitch, I guess I could just do this. Yeah, this area. From there, let's go along, buddies. So from there, I think I pitched it, which sounds like this. And the looping part sort of has a big piece in this. I think the release does too, actually. So this part keeps looping on itself, which kind of feels seamless and cool. So that's what this is here. So with nothing on it, which I can turn this group off, we can hear it. Oh, not that one, this one. So this is the part that loops on itself. So I like to get it into audio so I can choose exactly where I want to loop the thing. So for example here, this is the whole thing. That's where I started it. And yeah, this is the section I want. So what I did here was, I believe, what I had on, I think I had it on the group before, but I have a copy of it here, is this LFO tool. If I drop this on this section, I think it was a different preset actually. Just for the sake of the video or this explanation, I'm just gonna leave it. It doesn't really matter. So what I did was I rendered that. So if I move this over and I turn this to resampling, you could also do, like, you could also go choose 7.5, which is this channel here, as the input. So, well, now that I did it, I'll just do that. So it's going to record directly from here with the LFO tool on it because I have it here. So I'm going to record that. So noticing just based on the waveform, I think I probably had like a distortion or something on it bringing up the volume. Either that or I brought it up here, but it doesn't matter. I can still do that and bring it up. So this is the one we recorded. And in this one, so this is the one that we saw before. I pitched it up 12, but you can see that it's on the texture warping mode, and the grain size is set like giant, so it sort of gives it a weird feeling. So if we listen to it, it's the same thing we recorded. So if I go up an octave, which is shift up, okay, it's kind of weird, but it doesn't quite get as weird as this, or it doesn't feel as choppy, and that's just based on the warp mode. So if I go to texture, set this to full, set the flux down, which means it's just the grains that you're hearing aren't going to cross into one another. The flux basically just means you're going to hear like choppy grains instead of it trying to like mask the fact that it's being drawn out. Or in this case, you have more grains to work with because it's a. I'm not going to try and explain that part. Basically, it's just going to, if you turn the flux up, it's going to try and mask the fact that, like, it's going to mask the fact that there are grains, and if you turn them down, you're going to hear those little pieces. And I like those little pieces because it gives it like a weird artifacting sort of glitchy sound. So now, and if I layer it with the original, no, let me take the LFO tool off this now. So it's kind of weird. And then I started processing them as a group. I think I probably originally started processing just the raw file first, but then added this one in and then wanted to affect them both at the same time. So if I turn this group on and turn everything off, I can do them one at a time. And I don't know if I did them in this order or if I switched the arrangement and sort of started adding stuff in and out as I went. I'm pretty sure I started with the Pro MB, which is just basically bringing up some of the mid and high frequency ranges when they're like, yeah, when they're lower. So it's sort of reacting to what's coming in. That's off right now. It's kind of subtle, but it just helps like fill out the sort of like, especially in the left and right in the stereo frequency range, you can kind of hear the high frequencies are like coming through a little bit better. What did I add next? What's this? I think this was pretty early too. Yeah, so I wanted a long sort of spacey reverb. I ended up putting it before it. It's pretty dry. It's only at 20%, 23%, but it just sort of, yeah, especially when you stop it, it sort of rings out and gives it more of that like churchy feel that the choir kind of fits well with. Then I have a trash too, and this I believe is actually doing quite a bit. So I have another filter, like an EQ, just sort of boosting a little bit of the low mids and the high, like airy stuff. So if I turn even all of these off, we can. It's subtle, but when you throw it through the trash section, which gives you distortion. So in this case, I'm just using the blues driver and I've cranked it a little bit. But I believe, yeah, I brought the mix down a little bit. So it's doing quite a bit more now, obviously. and because we have it on both the octave up and um, the original, so this and this, I'm gonna bring this over just to make sure, because I think it's a little quieter. So this is the one I had before. But yeah, so filter, trash, another filter, because I found this was a little too intense, but I liked the character that it brought. So I brought some of the high frequencies back down. But it's still bright enough to like do the job that it needs to do. This is probably my favorite section of Trash 2, which sort of just like, it feels like it puts it in a space or gives it like a lot of them are modeled after spaces, but like some of them like electronic toy, or I think there's like a Game Boy one that I like, or maybe I thought it was called Game Boy, but it's the one I'm using is called Game Lad, and I think it might be modeled sort of off like a Game Boy speaker or something. I don't know, but if I turn this up, the mix, you can hear that it's like kind of sitting in a space. I just wanted a little bit of that. And then dynamics. So this is just sort of compressing everything so it's not peaking super hard. It is really subtle. So it's only really, it's not doing a ton. It's just sort of like helping the, even out the really like loud parts. And did I have a delay on it? I don't think I did, because the wet is negative infinity anyway. So that's trash. And so yeah, it's doing quite a bit of work, but really it's mostly just bringing out loudness and sort of distorting things just enough to sort of make it all feel a little squashed, a little closer together, between like a little less dynamic, but not in a way that's taking away from the sample. It's just sort of allowing you to hear the whole spectrum a little bit more, while it's next to everything else. So from there, we already have the reverb at the front, the Pro R, but I added a Valhalla shimmer as well. So even though this is an octave up, I still wanted the whole thing to have a like shimmery character to it. So with the shimmer, basically I took the feedback up, so it starts default at 0, but I took the mix down quite a bit and the diffusion down so it doesn't ring out a ton. Same with the size. Like basically I didn't want it to be a super long reverb. I just wanted it to be a character thing. So that's what this is doing. So without it, and then with it, you can hear it's just sort of at the tails of things, especially after the louder sections. It'll ring out a bit more. If you don't know Valhalla Shimmer, yeah, it basically just it does an octave or anywhere between, I think, any of the semitones. It just depends where you set the shift knob. So at 12, it's an octave up. It's a There you go. It's like a classic effect. This auto filter isn't doing much. I mean, it is 100% wet because it doesn't have a dry wet knob, but it's sort of just like moving a little bit in the higher frequency range to give this sort of phasing effect with the notch filter. It sort of ends up cleaning things up a little bit just because there's less frequencies going on at the same time, but because it's moving with the amount knob, and pretty slowly, it sort of has this warble that happens over a long period of time that I really like. Especially for this sound, it was cool. I don't tend to use it a lot, but it worked here because I wanted some more movement, but I wanted it to be subtle. I didn't want it to be like this. Like the low pass filter is a little too much, whereas the notch filter kind of has like a nice feel to it. And then to wrap everything up for that main sound, the sidechain is actually a really important part here. And the reason why I sort of wanted to make this was because he was asking me if there's a bunch of reversed things going on, which I did actually play with these copies over here. But the sidechain kind of makes it feel like that reverse thing because it has that sucking feel because the threshold is so low. But it's actually just that. It's not, and the release is like it's not super long. But actually it's pretty short, but it still gives it that sucking feel just because the level of the whole sound comes down so hard from the kick. So it's side chained to the kick. So it sounds like this. Without the drums and stuff, it sounds like this. If I wanted to get rid of a bit of that click, I might bring the attack up a little bit. You still get some of it, but it sounds a bit better. And yeah, so that's the main sound, and I can play it with the drums, which is this. So that's that. To sort of tie it all up, I actually rendered the whole thing, including the drums. So the drums, the orchestral sample on its own, I rendered that and sort of did this with it. So, or actually, it would be these two channels here. So this would be the original rendered, the top channel. The bottom, I started messing with the pitch a bit. So I literally just cut it up, dragged it onto a new channel, and started messing with the pitch of these guys. So like this is 5 semitones up. This, I think they're all 5 actually. 5. Yeah, so they're all 5 semitones up. But what it does is it sort of gives you this weird, like glitchy feel. And generally, I wouldn't recommend this because you want to sort of be done the idea if you're going to do this kind of thing. But I was just kind of having fun and messing around, and I was like, oh, I want to see what it sounds like if I just straight up mess with the audio. So I rendered the whole thing, and then these like are 5 semitones up, so it sounds a little different. Here's just a kick, so it like didn't really do anything, but this is probably my favorite part because whatever happened here, having them layered with like the 5th up plus the original just sounds really cool. And then actually, yeah, so I rendered those two together to create this, which is just the same thing. But I added these little sections just to give it more vibe, if you want to call it that, whatever. And that's that. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to show that off, kind of, and like that's kind of a lot of, especially with the glitchier stuff I make. That's sort of how I will do it. Just really sort of destroying sounds quickly, seeing what I can get. If it doesn't work, you just throw it out. But This one would actually is kind of probably more processing than I would normally use. Um, but I was just having fun with effects and stuff. And then the cool thing is when you make it more rhythmic at the end, so say using a sidechain or an LFO tool with like a weird sort of like rhythm on it, you can get it to be rhythmic even though you have like really long reverb tails because you're cutting the volume so hard that it still feels like it's in time with your track. So you could do it with delay, you could do it with reverb or like weird phasey effects too. So it's kind of just a cool way, like especially I bounce the audio a lot for that reason, so I can just like cut this up and move it over or whatever. Or in this case, like the sidechain is doing all the work coming from the kick so that it still feels like it's in time with everything. So feel free to play around with any of those ideas. I just like thought it would be cool to make a little video. Uh, Peace.